I'll just start with a couple of questions myself, and then I'll open up to the audience. Have a think of some things that you might like to ask. But Jon, at the beginning you mentioned a little bit about the kind of origins of the idea and where it first came from. Could you expand on that a little and tell us how it evolved into what we saw on screen tonight?
Sure. It was, I mean, the whole film started because of this man here, Jon Chapman, who is the guy who was in my class, and who, getting to know Jon, it really did kind of open up this world to me that I was partially aware of as kind of a cinema fan, but I wasn't aware of it as a community. So it kind of was born out of me and Hank were making other films at the time, and we had one car journey where I just started telling him about Jon, and it just started kind of evolving. It was a really long car journey, and we decided we wanted to make the film. Originally, because Jon was an X-Wing pilot in the film, we planned to just film X-Wing pilots, because that bunch of people are a really interesting crew. But it didn't quite work out. Most of them didn't want to do it. Garrick was the only one who kind of wanted to do it. And at that point, Hank actually decided that we'd just cast the net as wide as possible. Usually I do a lot of research, and for this film I did absolutely no research at all. And I said to Hank, just find me people. So I did no research at all. Hank did all of the research. Hank found all the people, and we just sat down. We've got a really small crew, just Sonny, our director of photography, and Cheryl, our sound recordist. And we just sit down for a few hours and we just talk.
And Hank, how many people did you kind of initially reach out to?
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that actually. I think I tried everyone I could. I mean, initially we sort of contacted Anthony Daniels and the little guy in the little robot. What's his name? Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and Kenny was funny actually. He was like, I'm too old. F off. No, it's actually what he said to me on the phone. I'm too old. F off. Just like that. But it was a lot of people, there's a lot of people connected to the film, really interesting people. And the fact is that when you call people on the phone, I remember speaking to you for the first time, actually, Derek, and I was wandering around the garden of my house in northwest London and talking to Derek for about 2 hours, I think we talked. And I thought, this guy's insane. He has to be in our film. And he's just a great, interesting guy, fantastic person. It doesn't matter that he was in Star Wars to me, really. And honestly, everyone I talked to was like that. They had some tale of something that they'd done, something they were going to do, and so I forgot what the question was, but yeah, quite a lot of people.
Derek, can you talk a little bit about when you were first approached about the project? Was it something you knew instantly that you wanted to be part of?
Oh, absolutely. When Hank initially called me and kept me on the phone for 2 hours because he talked so much, and I just told him all the anecdotes and about my kind of experience of being in the film business and working on Star Wars, etc. And so I didn't think it would come to this, that I'm on the stage with all you wonderful people out there. It's fantastic. And we filmed it over, I think it was 2 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Almost 2 years?
Yeah, it was about 2 years.
Yeah, and so they filmed, there's other stuff on the special edition, extras of me. And we can't talk about that yet. Oh, here we go, photographs. I love a Delphi, not a selfie. Yeah, so so it's wonderful to, and obviously eventually I met Jon at Waterloo Station, not at the station itself, but in a kind of special club. Not a funny club, a nice club, not a director's club anyway. And so we met there, and it was me, and then Anthony Forrest was interviewed after me, and they spent I think they interviewed me for about 4 hours actually.
Derek does talk.
I don't like talking.
Talking about the anonymity of it and how I let Hank find the people. Derek turned up for his interview an hour early, and I just thought he was staff at the location. He was just kind of buzzing around, and I don't think Hank really realised. It took about 20 minutes till we went, oh God, that's our interviewee. We've got to sit down with him.
Yeah, it was a great experience to meet Jon, and then Hank and the people, Sonny, who did the thing, and Cheryl Lee, and the rest of them who came to my house and filmed me in my little house and everything else, and in the forest. I wanted them to come to Sweden because I train in Sweden quite a lot. I go there quite a lot. And they said, we haven't got enough money for the budget to film you. So, But anyway, they filmed me in my local park, with lots of rats there, but they didn't film the rats. But, sorry, yeah.
Absolutely no one goes in that park. And you can understand why, can't you?
It's because Derek's beating up trees. We got covered in bark while we were filming Derek punching the shit out of a tree.
Hank actually said, I can't believe it, we're making a Kung Fu movie too, which was, was very nice of you to say. So perhaps we'll do that next time.
Maybe.
Jon, I wanted to ask you what kind of sense you had of how the film would work overall and the story it was going to tell, and if you had some idea in advance or you let the kind of interviews dictate the shape of the film.
Yeah, exactly that. It's really kind of a weird experience because the way that me and Hank make films is really we just have an idea and we have something that kind of intrigues us and we treat it as a journey. I mean, for us, the making of the film is the point of doing the film. And it's kind of born out of that, and every single interview you do kind of influences you and influences your take on it a bit more. But really, we got to the point where we had 10 interviews, and then we decided, okay, we're done, so we're going to edit it, and we're going to see what happens. And then it was conversations. It was talking to Hank. It was talking a lot to Cressida, who's our kind of lead editor on the project, and just kind of whittling the film down and kind of working out what it really was. I mean, I thought the film was actually going to be a lot darker than it kind of turned out to be. But I felt that when I was doing that, I was enforcing darkness on it. You have to kind of let it be what it is. And I still don't entirely know what it is. You know, it's a very kind of organic process.
Can I just say something though? But you know, I feel really privileged to be part of this film as I did in Star Wars. And it sort of, when Jon sort of approached me regarding the film, I never really fully understood what to sort of expect from it. But as it's grown and developed, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful piece. And I'd like to thank all of you actually for supporting the project, you know, because you've just not supported Jon and Hank and Elstree, but you've supported us as the artists in the film. And I'd like to ask you a question actually. What do you think of the film? You know, what do you think of it? Great.
Originally it was called Red Squadron when it was about the X-Wing pilots. Then it was called Masks and Helmets.
The reason it was called Masks and Helmets is because that was the one rule that we imposed on it, was that everyone who we were going to film had to have had their face obscured somehow by a mask or a helmet in the screen.
And actually when we decided on the name Elstree 1976, which Jon kind of had as a sort of an in-joke, I guess, for anyone who knew about the film, where and when it was made, the sales agents, the works who've been great and very helpful, said Japanese people won't understand what that is, and they wanted us to change it, but I don't know what to.
We kind of me and Hank are both kind of willfully obtuse people, and to me, I like the title a lot because I think it roots it in a very kind of ordinariness, and that was the DNA of the film. Really, what I wanted to do with the film was to take apart Star Wars, which has become this kind of crazy icon. It's replaced kind of a whole level of culture, it feels like. But the reality of it, as these guys will tell you, is it was just a soundstage for however many weeks, you know, and it's a bunch of kind of very normal British people or jobbing actors. So I wanted a title that just felt mundane, but which Star Wars fans would actually get. My favorite story about that is that Dave Prowse said no. He shot us down completely when we approached him. And to be honest, I was always against approaching the kind of bigger characters, but Hank as producer felt it was more commercial to do that. So I was kind of quite glad when most of them shot us down in flames. Dave said no out of hand, and we were filming the interview with Pam, who is a character in herself, and she said, "Who else are you interviewing?" And we told her the people we had lined up, and she said, "Why aren't you interviewing Dave Prowse?" And we said, "Because he said no." She said, "What?" He said no. So she gets her phone out and phones him. She goes, "Dave, why aren't you doing Elstree? Why aren't you doing Elstree?" And I don't know what he said. She said, "You're going to do it." And we're sat there, and me and Hank are just staring at each other in terror. And she goes, "They're lovely boys." "No, you're doing it. I'm putting you onto the producer."
And then she goes, "Talk to him." And then she gave me Kenny's number, and he went, Yeah, I mean, you say I cast my net far and wide, but I think I just typed Star Wars bit part into Google. I don't know if it was that
a
far and
metaphorical
wide.
far and
Yeah,
wide.
I mean, I talked to quite a few people who had been kind of stormtroopers, or they'd done some stunts, and there was a couple of. I think we really wanted to get a lady stormtrooper because that was really cool. Yeah, Kay Power. But
yeah.
she actually, you know, she wasn't very well, and there was some other folks. Yeah, it was really talking to a lot of different people. They were all great, but yeah, no
But
funny stories really.
It's also worth saying that like we had no budget for this. This is a complete no budget film. We got Kickstarter funding later on in the process, but going into it, we just paid for it ourselves, which meant that we couldn't afford to do certain things. So some of the actors or extras or bit part players were all in different places. Some of them were kind of down in Jersey and stuff, Isle of Wight, and we just couldn't get. I know exactly
Jon,
what you're going to say.
My expenses, where are they?
I thought you were going to talk about the extra issue. You should talk about that, Derek. About the word extras.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is my kind of grime at the film industry in the UK especially. Now, if I was in Ben-Hur, the film Ben-Hur, you know, I don't know if you've seen it with Charlton Heston, and I was a dot in the landscape, you can call that person an extra. But generally speaking, myself and Jon and many other people, my peers, you know, and I've been very lucky because I worked on some really marvelous films. If you're next to the main actor like Harrison Ford or someone like that, and you're doing a little bit, whether you're talking or not, you're not an extra. You're a supporting artist. You're supporting the artist. So that's the way I look at things. When I worked in the TV industry, and when I worked in the bill eventually, we were called, you know, supporting artists, you know, and that's the way it should be. And America is exactly the same. But unfortunately, in this country, it needs to change from extra to supporting artists. That's what I think, anyway.
Let's make that happen.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Campaign, vote for me.
Absolutely tons. And that's one of the interesting things about it is that when you do the interviews, you get kind of quite giddy on the kind of anecdotes, because I mean, especially someone like Derek, who's been in everything, you know, has incredible anecdotes. And if you see Derek later, he'll share most of them with you. You need some time. But so you get really excited about that, and you do think, oh, that's going to be in the film. That has to be in the film. But when you actually start making the film, you actually realize that anecdotes slow it down hugely. So you end up cutting a lot of it out. And one of my kind of, I wouldn't say one of my regrets, but one of the things which I regret, is that Jeremy, who played Boba Fett, because we had to bring him in later in the film, because he wasn't in the first Star Wars film, so he kind of broke our rules as to who was going to be there. He was just there for the convention section. His history is a really fascinating one, and he tells it really well. And he's just done everything. And the films that he was on the bus in Summer Holiday. He was one of the kids in Summer Holiday, and he was Billy Fury's drummer in all of those rock and roll films. And he went to school with Dennis Waterman and like Richard O'Sullivan, and he did a 1970s sex comedy, which he was the lead in, called "Can You Keep It Up for a Week?" I've seen it too. Yeah. It came out on DVD while we were making the film, and we kind of couldn't resist it. I gave it to Sonny, our director of photography, as a present. I can say conclusively the one question I did not ask in the whole process was that. And I'll tell you why, because when I first met Paul, it was at conventions, and I watched him being asked that by every single person who comes up to his table, and he takes it with incredible grace. But he now wears a T-shirt at all the conventions that says "I shot first." That's all it says in big letters. It says "I shot first," and still every idiot who thinks they're being hilarious goes up to him and goes, "Oh, who shot first?" And he deals with it with grace. But there was no way I was going to ask that question, so no, I never did. That's been dubbed the Vibrapause by Alan Jones, by the critic Alan Jones. That was one of the hardest things actually of making the whole film, was coming up with that. And you know, a lot of credit has to go to Kresta Kochainski, who was the lead editor on the film. How do I say your surname? Do it. No, tell me now.
Kozienski.
Say again? Kochainski. I'm sure you corrected me differently one time.
She likes to do that.
Yeah, Cresta likes to play with your mind. Anyway, it was a lot of that was through kind of conversation with Cressida. Cressida's an artist filmmaker in her own right, which was one of the main reasons I wanted to bring her on, because I didn't want it. My biggest fear with this project was that it was going to be seen as a fan film, which is not to kind of denigrate fan films, but it wasn't about that. It wasn't about reverence for Star Wars in any way. And I didn't want to fall into that trap. So I wanted to do something which visually kind of was a bit striking. We just played about with it. It was about kind of reframing stuff. I knew that because everyone who loves Star Wars who's going to see the film is so familiar with it. Like, I really feel like those images from Star Wars are kind of burned into the retinas of our entire generation. And it was important to me that we really mess with them a bit and that we represent them and we made you look at something you were really familiar with in a completely different way. And I thought it was the best way to kind of also kind of humanize the actors when you actually saw them and and making them the focus of it as the film makes them the focus. It just kind of made sense.
They're all totally insane.
So there was a specific trade. Trade.
They're all mental.
No, I really didn't at all. They're completely different people. They're really kind of radically different people. And one of the kind of inspirations for making this film was a documentary called Fire in the Night, which bizarrely is about the Piper Alpha disaster. And the way that film was kind of put together was that it took completely random people, and the only thing they had in common was this one experience, this one night that they'd been on the Piper Alpha when it had burnt down. And then the film was about how they dealt with it. And that was really important to me. So the fact that they don't share many traits was really important to me, because it's all about how they've all processed it.